Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Chalk Talk. I'm joined today by Susan Davison and Scot Graham. Susan is the principal at Guthrie Upper Elementary. Scot Graham is the principal at Cotteral Elementary. I'm Mike Simpson, superintendent at Guthrie Public Schools. Well, also joined by our producer engineer Aaron Ryburn, and we're glad you're joining us today. There's a common thread with our two guests. They are both going to retire at the end of this school year, and so we wanted to have them on because they are longtime Guthrie Public School employees in the leadership of the district, and really appreciate you guys joining us today. And let's start off with a little bit about each of you. Kind of tell your story. Scot, we'll start with you. Talk a little bit about, how'd you end up in Guthrie, and how'd you end up in education?
I started out with a business degree. I was in banking for 16, 20 years and was not making a difference. Decided to go back to school, get a degree in education.
Was it boring?
Every day. Yeah. Looking at numbers. Yeah. So I wanted to make a difference, and this was a great opportunity.
Okay. So,
yeah.
And talk a little bit about your life before you came to work in Guthrie too, in education. I know you covered
before,
the banking.
okay.
Yeah.
I was at another district as a teacher several years, and then assistant at 3 different elementary schools, and then saw a great opportunity here in Guthrie to be part of a smaller community, and that's what led me here.
Another district.
Yeah.
Do you not want to identify them?
Oh, it's Edmond. Yeah.
the big brother to the south, is that?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and Susan, let's talk a little bit about you. I know you've got a long history in the district, in the community, but kind of give us a little introduction to you.
I was raised here in Guthrie, so I went to Guthrie schools and then decided that I wanted to be in education, like Scott said, make a difference. So I started as a 6th grade teacher in 1984 over at Favor Elementary. And then after the fire, Guthrie Upper Elementary was built. So I moved over there and was there until, I've been there. And then in 2006, I went into administration as an assistant principal at Guess. Then I was at Fogarty for 2 years and then back over at Guess.
So how many years were you the principal at Guess?
This is year 17 in administration altogether, so 15.
Great. Scot, how many years do you have in education?
24.
Okay, so you guys both have been around a while and seen a lot of things through the lens of an educator. What's changed in education over your career? Susan, we'll start with you.
Well, I know it's said a lot, but social media has changed it a lot. It's changed kids, just their access to things, and it's unfortunately it's made kids grow up too fast. Sometimes they miss being a kid, doing the outside things, I think, too much.
You said last spring we had Todd Bramwell on, the principal at Guthrie Junior High, and he alluded to the phones and what that has done. And you got this thing in your hand, and it's so much more than just a telephone now. And I think you're exactly right. Scott, what else have you seen in education that's changed?
I think my thought is just technology in general. That phone is a distraction for the parents, the kids, and it's just continuous instead of conversations with students and children. I think we rely too much on technology for our extra time that we have.
Probably one of the worst things that happened to all of us is when we went from the text messages where you had to punch the button 3 times to just a keyboard, because I know I text more than I talk on the phone now, but that really wasn't the case when I had just gotten into administration when the phones were like that. But you could look at the kids even then, and they were so much quicker at it than I was. But it was too much trouble to text back then.
Right.
Scott, give us a funny story that happened over your career.
There are numerous stories, but
one you can tell.
Yeah. One of my favorites is just the fact that, and when I was teaching, meet the teacher. All the parents are surprised who the teacher is. Kids are even more surprised. One of my parents came in and just said, "I'm glad it's you." I know your personal phone number. This is back before cell phones. And I know you can always get a hold of me. We actually knew them from church, baseball, yeah, and, just all around. I knew the family.
Yeah.
And so it was great. The kid knew I would not hesitate to call if I needed to. He had a great year, and I had a great year. But it was nice for the, parents to be glad that I was there.
That reminds me of something early on in my career. When I was student teaching, I did it in my hometown, which they don't really like you to do that. But I remember one class in particular where I had my next door neighbor's daughter and my high school basketball coach's son both in the class together. And I remember something came up and they were talking and they said, well, he saw me when I came home from the hospital as a baby, So, yeah, that personal touch, when it makes a big difference. And I think that's one of the things that I really like about Guthrie. Scott, you talked a little bit about a smaller district. We're not big, but we're not small. And that's one of the things that I really like as a parent. And I know, Susan, I know you've raised your kids in Guthrie schools. And I think when you do know the teacher, and the teacher knows you, and the kids know that mom and dad know the teacher, it changes how things operate sometimes in the classroom. And I think that's a great point.
And even since we switched to neighborhood schools, it's really nice because now you have built a relationship with those parents. And so, they trust your decision, and you have to trust that they're going to, parent as they should. And it's been great, neighborhood schools for me.
Yeah, that was something that because Guthrie had been really gone through multiple generations of only being grade-centered, I don't think people realized what that change would make in the community. And it's created some challenges too. I mean, it was much easier to disperse the kids and not have overcrowded classrooms when we were grade centers than it is now. But the idea of the relationships that are built, and I think we all three would agree that relationships are a foundation of a good school system, and I think that's something that and it's both the administrator and the parent and the kid.
Right, and the teachers.
Exactly.
Older brother or sister has had a great teacher. Lots of times the parents would prefer their child to be in that class.
That's a great point. Susan?
I think one of the fun things at Guess is the relationships, like you said, that teachers build. And it's fun to have fun with the kids. And one story that comes to mind, former teacher, veteran teacher Nancy Bradley, pointed out to me one day, she goes, I was in such a hurry. And she said, I have two different shoes on. They were the same shoes, but one was black, one was blue. I was like, nobody will notice. 5 minutes after school started, though, I walked in. I said, kids, did you notice? Miss Bradley has on two different colored shoes. So we would like to, we got the kids involved, and that put them at ease a lot of times, just being funny. One time I went in on the Christmas party in her class. I asked them if she had sung it for them yet. And they said, sing what? And I said, she has a melody of Christmas songs. You should pester her until she sings it. And she couldn't sing very well. Yeah. So, we just had fun with the kids, and that's always good because that breaks that ice sometimes with those kids.
And Miss Bradley, she's such a gift. I mean, I love her. Well, that's great stuff. So let's talk a little bit more about why did you choose education as a career, Susan?
Having been raised here, I knew so many teachers that were here, and they were still here when I started teaching. And it's just those relationships that you build, and it's just something I always wanted to do. I wanted to be that person. I wanted to be that person that developed those relationships, like I had with Cheryl Underwood was one of them that I worked. I had in school. So I just wanted to be that person that could be that to kids.
Yeah. Scott, you're in banking and you decide you want to make a difference. Why education?
We had actually just had our second child, and I talked about it for numerous years, and my wife said, this is a year, do it or don't. And so I jumped in, got my teaching certificate, started there. And really the main reason was to make a difference, even if it's just one kid, whether it's a great kid or a struggling kid. If I could help him enjoy school in some way, that's what I wanted to do.
That's we find a lot of negative, but it takes just a little bit of positive,
Right.
and it keeps us coming back.
Right.
And I know that you guys have been through that because we've talked about it. What would you tell a high school senior when they say they want to pursue a career in education?
Be prepared for changes because they happen all the time. So don't assume that everything's going to stay the same your whole career. Make sure you're willing to make those relationships count because you cannot be an educator without relationships and building those. And it's going to be challenging. You know, a lot of people think that, oh, summer's off, all this, but it's probably one of the most challenging careers you can get into. So be prepared for challenges, but also be prepared for rewards because there's lots of those.
It's good. It's good. Scott?
I think the most important part is to let them know about the relationships that you build, not only with the students, but it's also important to develop relationships with your fellow staff members, because sometimes everyone needs a joke just to make it through the rest of the day. And sometimes those jokes can be shared with the kids that they'll enjoy. And so just that it has to be fun as you're learning. And so sometimes don't take yourself too seriously. There's some days that you will make it through the day, but there's so many days that are great, outstanding, and you're so blessed to have been there that day.
Yeah, not taking yourself too seriously is a good one, and I think having people around you that don't allow you to take yourself too seriously too is a good part of that. Let's talk a little bit about Scott? What are you most proud of in your career?
Even with the struggles, I know that every day when I come to work, I have done everything I can do that day for my staff, the kids, and just that every day being there, knowing that there's so much growth, so much opportunity, and helping everyone see that.
It's good. It's good. Susan?
Well, I think number one, I am proud that I managed to stay within the same district for 39 years. You know, a lot of people do move, change jobs.
Yeah.
And so with that has allowed me, just as Scott said, those relationships with teachers and with parents. And, you know, now I'm at a point where I'm seeing grandmothers or parents, kids come through that I worked with at an earlier age. And so just having those relationships and you know, having those people come back to you and let you know you made a difference means a lot.
What's been the toughest thing that you faced as an educator in your career?
Death of a student
Yeah.
and death of coworkers.
Yeah.
We had a coworker that went down and passed away from like a stroke right after school was out one day, and then of course the death of a child.
Yeah.
Students.
Yeah. Scott?
I think it's just as you're building those relationships, so many family changes nowadays.
Yeah.
And I just feel like sometimes you've given it to everything you can give to a student, and then next thing you know, they're gone because of some family situation. And all those situations are challenging for the students and the family. And I know all the families, we're doing the best we can. And, you know, that's all we can do.
Yeah, and I know that, Susan, in your building now, you've got the 5th and 6th graders. At one time, you had the 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. And Scott, you've got pre-K through 4th grade, but at one time you had pre-K and kindergarten. Kind of a common thread that I've seen is that at the elementary level, not the upper elementary, it seems like there are more transitional family situations because maybe through divorce and families trying to learn how to co-parent, some with more success than others. And I know that you've dealt with that a lot. Not that Susan, not that you haven't, because I know you have, but I mean, it seems like it's more volatile at the younger level now. And that's, I think that's a big change in education that we deal with. And and I know that you guys have both faced that. Do you think that has gotten progressively more challenging in education? Or has it always been that way?
I
Or-
think it's gotten.
Go ahead.
I think it's gotten more. There's more situations,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, sometimes there's the step parents get involved, and there's just so many pieces in it. And I feel like I see a lot more of it than I did when I was in the classroom.
I think with legal documentation that we have to make sure that we follow, many times that's challenging as an administrator because we're wanting to be fair to both parents. And again, we are trying to do the best we can. I'm sorry you had to provide a driver's license, but if we don't know you, that's what's expected.
Yeah.
And so at least we're watching out for your kid.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that kind of goes back to how different is school safety now than it was when we all got into our educational careers. I mean, what's changed there?
When I think back to the first year at Favor, of course, we didn't have air conditioning, so every door in the building and every window is propped completely open when we go back in August and September. And that just can't happen now. I mean, there's just those situations that make it impossible for that. And I know I don't like it for parents because sometimes it is an inconvenience, but I think the resource officers, having those at each building I know it's been a relief to me, even in those custody situations where, at least I've got someone else there to help back that if it were to get volatile.
Yeah. Scott?
And then also just with our drills that we do now, an intruder drill. Families, you prepare your kids for tornado and fire, have a little plan, but most families don't have an intruder drill. And so it's really challenging for an administrator, the teachers, to ensure the safety of those kids. And that's before we can even teach, we have to make sure they're safe. And that's interesting whenever we're doing those drills, trying to make sure the kids understand this may never happen, but we're going to practice so that just in case it does happen, we're doing we're doing what we need to do for the kids' safety.
And one of the things that I know both of you do, because actually I can confess here, both of my children, or one of my daughter has been in the building where, Scott, where you were back when grade centers were kindergarten. And of course, my daughter's been through Gues with Susan as principal. I've seen both of you from a lens of a parent be very caring, and in a way that I know you treat all the kids that way, and they come from so many different backgrounds and so many different situations, like we talked about with family and things like that. But that's the one thing that I'll compliment you on, is that it's a constant that it's caring, and sometimes it's tough love, but it can be tough and still be caring. And I think both of you really excel at that. So let's talk a little bit about what is unique about Guthrie and Guthrie Public Schools. And it's going to be harder for Susan to answer that, but that's why I'll start with you, Scott.
Okay. I think just the community on homecoming. I've never heard of a homecoming parade where the graduates from 50 years ago, they're all in town.
Yeah.
Edmond doesn't do that?
No.
Okay.
No. And it is truly a big deal. I know my secretaries, they have not missed their, big homecoming celebrations and stuff. So it's really neat to see that, and that community where the whole community is involved.
Yeah, that's good. Susan?
The same thing, how the traditions in Guthrie, and just how much it has grown. I'm not so much, but I will say the first 5 years of my teaching career, when I get my class list, I knew everybody on there, because Guthrie was so small at that time, and having been raised here. But just how much people know each other, and the respect of from the parents in the community. I think too, like the chamber, how they connected businesses with schools to support them and do things for them, and reward the teachers and treats and stuff like that. I just think it's great that they do that.
It's truly a community-wide effort to raise our kids, and I think that's something that Guthrie has embraced, and I think it's something that has grown. I think you guys would probably see that. You know, Scott, you came in my first year, and Susan, you'd been a principal for a little while before that, but we've all kind of grown up together, so to speak, as far as a district and as in administration. So let's talk about what's next for you guys. You're both going to retire, and what are your plans?
I cannot wait to take a vacation in August. I have not done that in 24 years, and I'm going to take a long vacation in August.
That's good. Yeah. Sometimes we do become the calendar can be burdensome in education, and so that's good. Susan?
Well, I've got my third grandchild coming in June, so that's exactly what I'm going to be doing, is being a grandma for a while. My husband's been able to take care of him, and I'm going to push him out of the way and take over.
There you go.
Poor Bobby.
Yes.
And Bobby's going to have more accountability than he's had in a while. Well, is there anything you guys would like to add about anything?
I think as an administrator, I'd like to share thanking the parents that are, school cannot do it alone. It is tag team from the time they get to the building until they wake up the next morning to get ready to come to school. Everybody has a part in it, and we all have to work together.
That's good.
I definitely know that things have changed and have been more challenging in recent years, and sometimes I look at my new teachers that are in their, third to fifth year of teaching, and I think, what's it going to be like 20 years from now when they're still here? So I just ask that everyone start recognizing the challenges that they are, and definitely give them that grace, because there is not a teacher in this district that doesn't want to be there and isn't working their tail off. So but I do appreciate all the support that this community's given, and the way they support Blue Jays.
Yeah, it's good. Well, I want to thank both of you for your, and we'll have our time at retirement ceremonies and things like that, but I want to thank both of you for all that you've done to make this district a special place, and I truly believe it is a special place, and it's because of, in large part, because of your leadership, and I know that when I say that the caring and the at times tough love is present, I know that is something that is consistent regardless of who the student is and who the parent is. And I truly appreciate that, both as the superintendent, but also as a parent of kids in this district. And so, hey, I'm so happy you were able to join us today for this, and I truly appreciate all you've done for this district. And so I guess for the last few days, I'd say finish strong and then enjoy.
Well, thank you.
Well, thanks for joining us today, and I appreciate both of our guests, Susan Davison from Guthrie Upper Elementary, Scot Graham, the principal at Cotteral Elementary, and, of course, our producer-engineer, Aaron Ryburn. Thanks for joining us on Chalk Talk. I'm Mike Simpson.